Fabric Gems Boutique is a video podcast where we celebrate the art of quilting. Each episode will be packed with inspiring guests from every corner of the quilting world, sharing their best gems of knowledge, creativity, and passion. Whether you're a seasoned quilter or just getting started, there's something here for everyone to help you create your own gem. Discover the hidden gems of quilting. And now, get ready for Fabric Gems Boutique with your host, Chris O'Connor.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris O'Connor with Fabric Gems Boutique video podcast. I am so excited to be here today. I am in Van Alstyne, Texas. Do you know where that is? It's north of Dallas. And I've got a friend here who actually we haven't connected for, we were just talking about it. Holy moly, 15 years. That's a long time. We were networking together in a different business. Hers was different than it is today, but it's funny how we ended up in the same circle once again. Doesn't that happen to you too? I want to introduce you to Shirley, and her name of her business is Grammy Quilts. Welcome, Shirley.
Thank you.
You guys, I cannot tell you, are in for a treat. I have goosebumps just sitting here. We have so many fun things that we're going to share with you, show with you. She is doing this out of her home, and she's got this big, beautiful room. You can see this wonderful machine behind us and all these cool lights. I feel like I'm in the studio with all these fun lights. And she's going to tell us her journey and how she became a quilter and how she got into doing. It's a fabulous story. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks
for
being
having
here.
me.
So tell us more about, your journey and getting involved in quilting and ending up with this beautiful machine and all that kind of good stuff.
Okay. Well, my journey started a long time ago, so about 10 years ago. My mother-in-law was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and my youngest and I would travel up and help take care of her in Missouri off and on. After one of the visits, as her disease had progressed, my father-in-law, unbeknownst to me, had loaded my car with all of her fabric, and he even brought her machine out, which I gave to our youngest because she was the one who made all the trips up. And so I got home and I thought, what am I going to do with all this? I don't even like to sew.
That's hilarious.
But anyway, so one thing led to another. And so we sat down. I had no tools but a sewing machine. So Emily and I went and got our cardboard box from a cereal box, and we cut out our squares, took a marker and then cut them out, and we just made a simple patchwork quilt for her.
Mm-hmm.
She had used the different fabrics in different items she had either made for grandkids over the years, for herself or her husband, or even people in the church, because she was a pastor's wife.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, if she ever had a lucid moment, we wanted to bring back a fond memory. Whether that happened or not, I'll never know. But you always want to do something for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our way of trying to help, her have memories,
Right.
good memories back. So,
Mm-hmm.
And then my daughter, after we made that, our oldest daughter had made me a quilt for Christmas. And she said, Mom, if you like quilting, you need to check out Missouri Star Quilt Company.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started watching Jenny's videos, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a visual learner.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd sit there and I'd be cutting, I'd stop it, and and I'd make them. And half square triangles were my best friend, because you can do so many patterns from that.
Oh,
just the way you turn
and
them
quickly.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I started just following her stuff. And I think the first pattern that I made it's called the Big Star. And I mailed it to my dad. And he said, when did you learn how to sew? Anyway.
I love it.
But he loved
it.
that I was quilting, because
Uh-huh.
his mom had quilted.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember much of that from her. I remember her sewing us pajamas each year for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
We never had the buttons on or the elastic, but we got our pajamas,
Yeah.
our gowns.
Yeah.
But that was okay because Grandma made it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
but it brought back memories for him, and it opened conversations for us that we had never had before.
It's interesting because I think that our generation had a lot more of that than they do today. And I wonder why that is. why more people don't have the abilities or want to take, maybe it's time, maybe it's too busy to learn how to sew. Now, I know that when I was in high school, it was a required class.
Right.
So every, I don't know, 6 weeks we had to do something different. It was health, and then it was sewing, and then it was accounting, and then it was blah, blah, blah. And I wonder if there was a way to bring all that back into school systems as a senior. Now,
That
they
would be nice.
do have woodworking, or they did when my son was going to high school.
Right.
It opens a door to kids that maybe don't want to go to college, but they have a great hobby that could really help them.
It turns into a trade.
It really can.
Yeah.
It really can.
And a lot of times we know college is kind of out of people's reach. And if you learn a trade, and this is a very vibrant trade, and you asked why they don't sew or quilt that much these days. I mean, it is a thriving business. I think it's because a lot of times, when I grew up, my mom didn't always work outside the home.
Correct.
So she had more time to do that, and now and we didn't have so many ball games to go to. We only did the ball games through the school. It wasn't additional stuff.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we busy ourselves more than we need to.
Oh, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. But
So,
I'd love for more people to get involved in this world. I mean, I've been sewing forever. Both my grandmothers and my mother sewed. My mother worked at Stretch and Sew, made all my clothes. And I know we had this discussion, which I absolutely hated. But I look back now and I think I was way more fashionable than most of the people in my class.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I hope that all of you out there, like, maybe put your toes in it if you haven't started yet, because obviously look what you did. You took cardboard square
I did.
and traced it and cut it. It's not rocket science.
One, if you feel like you can't afford it. When I started, my birthday, Mother's Day, anniversary, Christmas, everybody, we always ask each other, so what do you want? I would say, okay, Joann's has, now Joann's isn't going to be there, but I would say they have this on sale, and don't buy it. It's not on sale, because it will be on sale again. Give me a gift card. So I would ask for gift cards, or I would tell them specifically, here's the link. This is what I want. That's where I got my rotating mat. I got my rotary cutters, my mats, just the simple things. You don't have to start with a lot.
No, you really don't.
So an ironing board, your rotary cutter, and a mat is always good. And then just a good straight ruler,
Which honestly, most of us have an ironing board and iron.
We do. Yep.
Okay, because we do iron clothes. Now, if you don't like to iron clothes, then you probably don't. But yeah, I've had an ironing board and iron forever, as long as I can remember.
I iron all the time now.
Yeah, yes, you have to with that, your seams and everything else.
Yeah.
So I just think that I would love to see more of the younger generation put their toes in and see what they think. And you never know what your next thing is going to be. And maybe while that baby's sleeping, maybe there's some time that you can throw a few blocks together and create something.
Well, yeah. When we create, the endorphins release, and they're happy ones.
They really are. They really are. So tell us a little bit, where did Grammy's quilt come from? She just told me the story, you guys. It's great.
Well, my grandkids call me Grammy. I'm not Grandma. I'm not Nana. I'm Grammy. And so when we were coming up with the name, because you search the web and it's like, oh, that one's taken, that one's taken, that one's taken. But Grammy Quilts was not taken. So it's Grammy because I am a Grammy. But I thought I want to create quilts that people will be proud of. And if I custom quilt for somebody, that'd be something that they win a Grammy for, their ribbon or, whatever. So I want quality quilts. So it's Grammy Quilts.
Right. So before we show something, because I think that leads into that first one we need to show, but how did you get into getting that machine? What transpired that you wanted to quilt your own quilts or make it a business?
Well, I was quilting my own quilts on one of these. You'll see I just did simple stippling. I did it on my own home sewing machine. Their throat is small, so you're limited space. So I would just take and roll it up, and I'd work a certain quadrant of that quilt and then move it to another quadrant and work on that. And then once that side was done, I'd roll it up and then work on another, just work my way through the quilt. I had seen on Marketplace a long arm, and it was just a self-guided, did not even have the regulated stitch, which regulated stitch basically means as I'm sewing, it will adjust the stitches by how fast or how slow I go.
Oh,
Mine did not have that, so I just always tried to keep a steady flow so the stitches were consistent.
mm-hmm.
But when it has the regulated stitch, which is sometimes an add-on, that allows for you to slow down or to speed up, and it will keep things consistent, your
Mm-hmm.
stitches.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I'd seen it on Marketplace, and I thought, oh, there's just no way, and it was really an affordable price, but
It's still an investment.
It is.
It's just, and will you use it enough for that investment
Right.
that you're making,
and
right?
are you willing to give up the space in your home?
Exactly,
Yeah.
because this is 12 foot.
12 foot, yeah.
So everyone that I've spoke to so far has had a 12 foot.
Yeah.
And everyone that I've spoke to so far said, don't go small because you're going to want the bigger one.
You are, yeah.
Do you feel the same way?
I have a friend who has a 14 foot, but that was because she bought it used, and that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk about size, I think 10 or 12 is probably your standard. But when I talk about don't go smaller, it's the throat of your machine.
Okay.
Because I think they may make 15, but I think 18 is pretty much standard. That's what my first one was 18 inches. This one is 30 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And I had debated on the 26 or the 30, and my husband encouraged me to go with the 30, and I've not looked back or regretted it.
I sometimes think that we can nickel and dime ourselves to death by going smaller and then realize, oh, we should have spent the little extra money to go larger.
Yeah.
That's my advice. I've learned that lesson over and over again.
So with my first machine, I saw it on Marketplace, but then, a couple months had gone by, she had not sold it, and so she came down. So when my husband saw it, and he said, oh, what do you think? And I said, really? And so we did purchase it, and she was actually upgrading to what I currently have. And I had it for 2 or 3 years. And was very, very happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have one that's not computerized, on the back of here, there is a table, and it's a long sheet of paper,
Mm-hmm.
and it has the pattern on it. So it's called a pantograph.
Okay.
So on the back of your machine, you have the handles there, and on the front. So on the back, you have a laser light, and that laser light, you put it on that pattern, and you just take your handles and you follow that pattern. So that's how it transfers to your quilt.
Oh.
So everybody's like, wow, how'd you do that? I had a laser light and I had a pantograph.
Wow. Well, this is the first time I'm hearing about this.
Yeah.
So this is.
So if you don't have computerized, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one had a little table that you could add onto it. I didn't get proficient in using rulers, but people who do custom and do ruler work, that's handy, and that's why you have the handles on the front of the machine.
I gotcha.
Because you're going to work from this side instead of the back.
Right. And I've seen that, and I've played not with the Gamel. She's got a Gamel. What's the model?
Statler.
Okay, and I played with the handy quilter.
Yeah, and that's a great machine too.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do very well, but again, it was first try, right? And that's normal.
It's fun.
You got to practice.
You have to have
right?
fun.
Okay, so now you move to this machine then.
I moved to this machine when my dad passed away.
Okay.
And these machines hold their value. I was able to sell my first one for what I paid for it.
Nice.
So I used that as part of my down payment on this one, and then used my inheritance. So I paid cash for it. Not everybody gets to do that. So I was very, very, very fortunate.
Yeah.
So I paid cash for my machine. So it took the stress for me off of I've got to get so much work done so that way I can make my payments.
Right.
So that was a blessing. And my dad loved my quilting journey. So it's like spending time with my dad. And I did do a custom job. I painted it red because he's from Nebraska. So go Big Red. So that's how I got that.
That's where I want to lead into this,
Right.
because I think that this is really a cool story. It gives me the chills, and maybe you can do something like this too eventually down the road or whatever if you inherit. My mother, I inherited a very small amount of money from my grandmother back in the 90s. And I told my mom, I don't know what to do with it. What am I supposed to do with this money? I mean, I don't want to pay bills off with it. I don't, And she said, you need to buy something that reminds you of your Nana. Okay, well, my Nana sewed a lot. What did I do? I bought a Singer sewing machine.
Yeah.
Okay. this, she quilts every time she's like spending time with her father. I mean, it's so cool to me. Maybe I'm just too sentimental, but
No.
I just love that. And I think that maybe you can incorporate something into your, it doesn't necessarily need to be a gamble or, it could be a sewing machine. It could be scissors. It could be a ruler. It doesn't matter what it is, but it connects you with that person who's no longer here.
Right. Well, and if you are on the fence, you don't have to buy new. My first one was used, and I never had any trouble with it. Mm-hmm. It was a great machine. They're tanks. Mm-hmm. They are built to last. Mm-hmm. They're like having a commercial machine. Mm-hmm. They work great. And whoever you use, I think you had done another podcast with a dealer, mm-hmm. With Anova.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they have a helpline just like Gamble does. Mm-hmm. You can just call in, and if they can't get to you right away, they schedule time.
They all do. Yeah. I mean, Handy Quilter does.
And they walk you through it, and since I'm computerized, they can log into my computer and say, oh, this is what's going on. Mm-hmm. So it's great.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. So speaking of family and fathers, okay, so let's tell the story a little bit about this quilt. Well, first of all, I want to share something with you before we open it up. What did you preach to me first?
Put a label on.
Look at that beautiful label.
Always put a label. Now that one's bigger than normal, but I do have quilts from my grandmother or my grandmother from both sides of the family, but I don't have a label and I don't know which one made them. Mm-hmm. So, and of course this one, the only reason I put the ruler tape around it is because he was a carpenter too. And of course I built the quilt was a carpenter star.
We won't be able to get this whole thing in here, but we just want to show you some pieces, a little show and tell.
So my dad had stage 4 cancer, and so what I did is I had put my mom and dad's name in the very center. If you built on one of the squares, if you built a carpenter star, they have different squares. So what I did was put my mom and dad, and then each of us as kids around that layer, and then the grandkids were in this layer. And then the great grandkids were on the outer layer,
on the very outside. I don't know if you can.
So we all didn't live in Nebraska where my dad was, and I just told him, we may not always be there, but we are with you when we have this.
But I also want to point out that I know many people do memory quilts, and some of them are T-shirt quilts, and a lot of these are shirts. Okay, they're not fabric, but shirts are fabric, but not quilting fabric per se. And so she put these in here too. But I want you to look at how beautiful it is. But it's simple.
Yeah. It's all half square triangles. Here's one. Here's one. Mm-hmm. Here's one. Mm-hmm. So and they're big ones. So the quilt goes together, rather quickly.
How big are these squares? Do you remember?
It's been so long. I don't know.
They look like 7 or 8 inch squares.
I was thinking probably 8 inches when they started.
Yeah.
So, but anyway,
and how did she just embroidered? She has an embroidery machine, so she just embroidered the names, right?
I did, yeah. I embroidered the names, and I have a few more I need to add because grandkids have been added since.
Yep,
he passed. But
I bet.
But anyway, and this one I quilted on my own, just my, what do you call it? Your domestic machine.
Yes. Okay.
Just simple stippling.
And for you Baylor Bears out there, there you go.
Yeah, my dad was a farmer, and John Deere was his. So I have the John Deere here, John Deere fabric, which my dad was like, "Where did you find that at?" But he always went to my son's baseball games. So there's just different pieces here. And I was telling Chris earlier that my dad had got stage 4 cancer, and I had asked all the family members because there's 5 of us kids, so I knew I'd have plenty. Mm-hmm. I said, "Then the grandkids send me shirts, something, even if it's something that you're going to throw away, that's okay." It's from you. 4 or 5 weeks went by and I didn't get anything. So that's when I went to my husband's closet and said, "Okay, what are you getting rid of?" Mm-hmm. And it's free fabric.
Why not? I mean, it's called memories for a reason, right? And maybe it doesn't necessarily mean it came from them, but something that describes them. Right. And that's exactly what that does. I just, for all of you out there who love the memory quilt idea and you think, "Oh, there's no way I can do that," step outside the box a little bit, go to the closet, did Grandpa wear this shirt? Did Grandma wear this shirt all the time? Did she show up at holiday events with that? Or, there are certain things that as we get older, we wear a lot of. over and over
Yeah.
because we're not into buying big,
Nope.
large closets
Nope.
anymore.
Nope.
So we're learning to scale back.
Less is more.
I'm scaling back like I never thought I ever would, but let me tell you, it's freeing when you scale back, except for this kind of stuff. But you can't, it's hard to let that stuff go.
Right.
So that leads me into now we talked about this quilt here that I want to share with you, quilting, and where she got some of this.
So right where you get your Gamble does have a program that you can purchase. For me, it was out of my price point. So there are two ladies, and it's let me get this right here. It's Joan Knight and Joyce Lundergan. It's with the Methodist Hill. I think their website's the Northern Needle, but they do DBA is Methodist Hill. But they teach classes, and this was one of those classes. And with the classes, it's like only $30, and it includes all your patterns. And they talk you through how to build a pattern, because like I don't know if you can see it or not, but this one with the star, well, the rays on it. This was a pattern, and then they taught us how to do this, and then because it goes all the way in, but they taught us how to take the rays out of here and put them out here. So for the class, it taught me how to use my software, because that was always intimidating to me. But I mean, when with the classes, it's very simple quilts that we build, so that they want to spend their time teaching you the software and how to apply it onto your quilt.
Well, and what's also cool about this is that this was not fabric she went to the store for.
No, it was an old, and it wasn't that old, but it was a quilt comforter that I had. And you know, sometimes they come with that real thick batting, and then it has the circles that hold it together because it's too much to quilt. And on the corners, I didn't even send it to the dry cleaners, but the corners came all bunched up, and it just didn't hang right. So I tried to sell it on Marketplace real cheap. No, I had no takers. So I thought, well, there's free fabric. So during football season, I just took out those little circles, and then the fabric this was the front, and this was the back of my quilt. This was the back of my comforter. So I just used it back here. And the only ones that I added was the black and the white.
See, and I hope you guys can see that. I can't like zoom in, but
that's okay.
You can kind of trying to see if you can sort of see it in the light on the camera.
Yeah, probably with those lights, it probably causes a reflection.
Yeah, it may.
So anyway,
so she's just stepping outside the box all over the place. And, you know, use what you got. You already have probably everything that you need to create this. Now, do you ever want to go to have your own quilting machine? You might. Okay. But if you don't, then you come to somebody like Shirley. And so tell us about that. Like, if somebody needs their quilt quilted, what do you require? How do you do it? She's mostly word of mouth, and she's busy.
I am.
So tell us what you require when somebody comes.
When you have a quilt, and at first I didn't understand why. Your backing fabric needs to be no less than 2, but most long arm quilters will ask for 3 to 4 inches on each side. So it needs to be 6 to 8 inches wider than your top, and the same for the top and the bottom, because what you're doing is you're adding them onto the quilting frame here, and then I need to have something to grab onto the sides to assure that we don't have wrinkles when we quilt. So that's what you're going to want. And then the batting. I do carry batting. I carry an 80/20. I get it from Linda's Electric Quilter. Buy it by the bolt. I do carry wool, and when I do, I buy it by the case, because not many people get it. But I love wool. Wool it's lightweight. It breathes. You're not too warm in the summer, but you're plenty warm in the winter. It's weird how that works, but it does, and it just drapes beautifully.
Well, and that's why my great grandmother and grandmother, that's what they always used was wool, right?
Yeah.
And
it's a washable wool. You don't have to dry clean it.
Right. So many of you may not think that way because you think wool is heavy.
Right.
You think you can't breathe, you're going to suffocate. But honestly, it's more of a breathable than this batting.
Right. Yeah.
I have found like this kind of batting, I sweat to death. but I have one that I told you is wool. I don't sweat at all.
Yeah. Now this customer wanted 100% cotton, so I ordered it.
Sure,
Because
absolutely.
most everybody wants the 80-20 because it's not going to shrink.
Right.
You know.
Right. Now, if you do use 100% cotton, does it shrink, or is it?
Well, she didn't pre-wash her fabric, so it should, and it's cotton, so it should shrink
Together.
the same. Yeah.
Okay.
If they pre-wash, you can pre-wash your bedding. I don't. If they
So
want to pre-wash, they would do it.
There's the debate out
Yeah.
there, like, and with everybody who
right.
does quilting, like as a business, some will say pre-wash, some will say don't pre-wash, some will say depending on what fabric you're using,
Right.
to or not to. Honestly, it's a personal preference. It really is.
I like the crispness of new fabric, so I don't wash.
I do too, because you'll never see that again once you wash it.
Yeah.
Right. So I agree with that. I don't wash. I don't pre-wash mine because I never like how the fabric looks after I've washed it.
Yeah.
Even if I do it cool and air dry it, it's just, I don't know. There's the Christmas, I guess, is not the same. So, okay. So we learned that put a label on everything.
And if you don't have an embroidery machine, you can cross stitch it. There's permanent markers you can just write on a piece of paper or write in the corner of the fabric that's on the quilt. Or sometimes there are sheets of fabric that you can run through your printer.
That's what I do. That's what I've done. I know a lot of people are afraid of doing that, but I experimented with a quilt, and it was for a conference and this is really outside the box, but I usually give some type of gift to our keynote speakers, and I made quilts for them.
Oh, wow.
Why did I do that? I don't know, but I did. But there was one 5-inch square that had the logo for the conference in several different spots. But I just put them I take them on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I just used the 5-inch square. I didn't even use the real fabric that's made for that.
But you can,
And then I ran it through, and then I ironed it, to set it in. And then I just sewed it like regular.
Yeah.
I was like so happy with myself, and I kind of went a little crazy because it was so fun.
Yeah.
Once I got my system down and got them in the middle and so on and so forth, I must have probably did, it was only 2 at a time, but I probably did easy 30 of them.
So was it an inkjet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because they say laser. It's
Laser,
not gonna put it
right? No, I have an inkjet.
Yeah.
Well, I have both, but I ran it on the inkjet.
Yeah.
I watched lots of videos, and I watched somebody do it, and I said, "Oh, I could do that." Thought I could do that, and that's.
And one thing one of your other podcasts pointed out, which I appreciated, what you give me is what you'll get back.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can, if you bring me fabric straight from the fabric store, it's going to have creases and stuff because it's been on the bolt. I can mist it as I roll it, and it works most of it out, and no one ever sees it. I used to iron them, but Corey from Linda's Electric had said, "No, that's not your job," and so I stopped doing that. But this works just fine. There is a chemical-based product you can use, but I find just steaming, just misting it with water as I roll it in while I'm loading it, and then re-roll it back. And most of it's all gone by the time I get that done. But do press your seams, take the time, because your quilt is going to be lay flatter. It's not going to be poofy. You're just going to be happier with the end product.
Well, and sometimes, and I learned this, and I don't know if from a friend who is has a handy quilter, like when she was doing, I'm new, and so some of my points were kind of set up a little bit too high. She took a hammer to it.
Yeah.
And it flattened the sucker out.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So sometimes you're going to have a little point here or whatever. I'm not saying you are, but where all your fabric is meeting from all the different angles. And sometimes it's just too thick, and it'll show, it'll be like it's pointing.
Well, and sometimes if you do have the fullness and bulkiness there, it will cause the stitch to either be larger because instead of going through it again, it just kind of skips over it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to cause a bigger stitch. You'll be happier. Sometimes if I have, like this one's been in a bag for a little bit. I'm finally getting to it, but as I go, I'll probably steam it, and I've got a cordless iron. I'll just go over the top, just smooth it out. So when it quilts, because when it's quilted, it reflects on me too.
Absolutely.
So I want a good job, and I want it to look good. I want them to be happy.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, they're paying for your time, and
Right.
and this is your artwork that you're handing
Yeah.
back to them. You just saw some of the cool stuff on this other one. So then, do you choose the style of how they quilt it, or do they choose the style, what goes over the top?
I'm happiest when they tell me what they want, but there are some, and many do. I'll probably say 3/4 of my clients will say, go through your patterns, send me ideas. So I'll put it on the screen because as I get quilts, as I pick out patterns, I'll create a job in because this is like AutoCAD.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just put the patterns in there, and then I choose edge to edge, and I click on it, and it will populate my
This
yes,
right here?
yeah, it'll
Okay.
populate that pattern in there, and I can, because it's computerized, I can add more for density, or I could take less out, because some are always like, I don't want it to be a real
Tight.
stiff.
Mhm.
Yeah, so take it out, or whatever they
You can-
suggested works.
What she's explaining is you can pull the pattern out so it's bigger, larger, or you can push it in so it's smaller if you want it real tight. So whatever the
Yeah.
pattern is,
Or
right?
what? Yeah, that you can do that, but you can also, because sometimes it'll say 3 repeats across and 5 down.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, that was really a big pattern, so let's do 4 repeats.
Mhm.
So and then it gives you the consistency of your pattern across your whole quilt.
I love that idea because I'm a visual person, like you mentioned earlier. You're visual.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to imagine what it's going to look like on here, right? And so, being able to kind of get a glimpse of what it'll look like is very helpful.
Yeah. So I'll do a couple of them, because you can you can click on a different pattern,
Mhm.
and it just repopulates it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just screenshot it, send it to my client. And then the same with thread. I'll lay their thread across and tell them the colors. I'll give them 2, 3 options sometimes. And then they choose that, and we go from there.
So on a quilt like this,
Uh-huh.
what color thread would you normally go with?
She asked for white. Gray is the new white, though. And I would have suggested a light gray, because it lends to a white, but it'll still blend in nicely. But she wanted white, and that's fine.
So if you had gone with, it doesn't really matter, but it'll kind of like blend into the background here.
Yes.
But also it will make this so it still stands out, right?
Yeah. You'll see some of it on there. If you did a custom, there are, like, this would be considered like a flying geese. There are flying geese patterns you can get, and then here's your triangle just to highlight that. But this is going to be an edge to edge.
So when you say edge to edge, what does that mean? One pattern edge to edge?
One pattern edge to edge.
So that's what, if you don't know, okay, which I can assume I know, but I didn't know. But edge to edge means you're going to have the same pattern. Now, you had talked earlier about like custom quilts, but you didn't have to do the whole thing custom. Is that what you said? That was like, I think I remember you talking about something on here.
Well, this one is a custom.
Oh,
just
okay.
because I had to set up the border.
Okay.
When you set up a border, there's a pattern here, unless it's a pattern that just naturally would flow around here. So when you set it up, it does the top. It starts on the side, does the top row, and then the right side. So when I'm done quilting this way, I'll take it off and I reload it sideways, because I want my stitches to be continuous. So then I quilt my sides, but it connects into like this here from the other side.
So you can't really see it.
No, you can't see it on the back.
But you can see this. That makes sense.
I have found, this is a tip that I've found. I did have a client who had a light colored quilt. I think it was more like a muslin. And she wanted a navy thread. And that sounded pretty. But I always, when we got done with it, she's always been really excited about her quilts, but she didn't say a whole lot about that one. I find dark threads on light colors aren't real. It just doesn't go for whatever reason. But like here, I did yellow throughout the whole quilt here, even on the white. I like the other contrast, the lighter colors on dark. It just does so much better.
I would have to agree with you on that.
the few quotes that I've done, we did the dark thread, and I wasn't the biggest fan. I think it would have been prettier with a lighter color.
Yeah.
So it does make sense, and they know what works because they do this all the time, and they see how it turns out. So if you're thinking a dark thread, then it's not going to look how I think you think it will look, right?
And I could have done this with black, and you wouldn't see that, but I wanted it to show, so I just kept the same yellow throughout my quilt.
But you see, I think it gives it definition here, but not overbearing.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I guess it depends on your personality and who you're giving it to.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And sometimes someone will say, I saw this pattern on Etsy or on Pinterest. Can you get it? And usually you can. Most patterns cost about $15. Sometimes they're on sale.
Mm-hmm.
But with this class, I got all all the patterns to build this with the instructions for $30. So it was well worth my time.
Yeah.
And it just gave me the confidence.
Yeah.
And I felt more comfortable with my machine and software.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you were talking about custom.
Mm-hmm.
There is a different price point there, because usually on edge to edge, sometimes I will treat a customer, because I have some who bring me lots of quilts. If they do a 6-inch border, I'm not going to do edge to edge. I'm going to create a border for it, and I'm not going to charge them. Usually different quilters charge a different fee. I just charge a $15 setup fee, just because I know I'm going to have to turn the quilt, and that pays for my time of unpinning this and repinning it and moving it. It doesn't add that much more time to my quilting. It's just the setup time.
I have watched every person that I've taken my quilt to, and it is not like an assembly line. It takes time to set this up, to make sure that everything is square, number one, to pin it all in, or some have those bars that you can put over
the magnetic bars. Yeah.
But you've got to make sure that the sides, and there's a process to making sure that it's done properly. So you don't have those little puckers here and there. And, you know, there's an art to doing this.
And I baste as I go. And to make sure that my quilt is always straight, our software offers a deal called Channel Lock, which I can set it at 0 degrees, which means it's going to go left to right. And I can push on that machine and it's not going to move. So when I go left to right to baste, when I start it, I know it's straight. Mm-hmm. And then as I go down, I change it to 90 degrees, and then I just go down the side. Mm-hmm. But when I went to a quilter's confidence class with Gamma, when they were in town, I've always quilted. I've always basted from the top down. Sometimes I found it would, because I'm always watching, my lines here to make sure that my quilt is staying as square as possible. Mm-hmm. Because quilting it pulls the 3 layers, and it's not always going to end up, depending on what pattern you use and how much thread is in certain areas. But they taught to quilt when you baste from the board, they call it a belly bar, because your belly's generally against it, and go up this way. So I can take my fingers and I can work in any fullness that there might be, but I'm still keeping my quilt square.
That's a great tip.
So
that's a great tip. How many of you taken classes for your quilting machine? I imagine probably not a lot of you, but I would highly recommend it. It doesn't matter the name brand. It's amazing what you learn in those classes, and those tips that they give you are like priceless as far as I'm concerned.
If a girl who doesn't like to sew is doing this, if I can do it, you can too.
Yeah. Well, and you're going to say, well, the machine does it all. No, you've got to set it up first to make sure before the machine can do the rest of it. I mean, it's a work in progress for sure.
And I have had people say, oh, so you have a computerized one, so it'll be cheaper? And I say, right, the machine does it, but I've made the investment, so your pattern will be the same on each one of these, and it's going to be precise and consistent. Mm-hmm. So, and it's not any more than hand guided, but you're right.
She went to school. She went to classes. You have to take all that in consideration. Yeah. She just didn't open up and say, hey, come on over. Well, maybe she did, but that was Family Quilts, right? Because you're right. Your name's attached to it. Yeah.
whenever my name was attached to it, I want to make sure that you're happy and it's, you know,
Right.
what you expected. Actually, I wanted it to be more than what you expected.
Right.
And so that leads me into more than what's expected. So she just told you a little tip about her border, but don't tell anybody, okay? Because don't make a mad rush to her, or maybe make a mad rush to her. But when somebody comes to pick up their quilt, she has a cool little system that I absolutely love. Again, I've got goosebumps thinking about it because it's such a simple thing and it's not super costly for her to do.
No.
But I said this quote this morning, it's not about, you know, it's the Maya Angelou one about the end of the day, at the end of the day, however it goes, it's about how you make people feel, right? They may not remember anything else, but how you make them feel. So I can, not even knowing any of her customers, know that this next little tip that she's going to share with you. So let's share that.
So I make a small investment. I get these off of Amazon. The bags. This one actually has 2 quilts in it because they were just throw size. If it's a throw size, I do put it in a gift box. This one doesn't have the lid on it, and I'll show you why in a minute. But I fit 2 gift boxes in here, and then I return all of her stuff that she brought me.
Usually people bring their stuff on hangers,
Yep,
right? Or no hanger.
Or in a bag.
Yeah, or in a bag.
Yep.
Okay.
So this is a brand new client, and she did 2 the very same size. And, I make the labels, and this one I went ahead and did the binding like you would on your quilt.
Let's see if I get that up close. Binding on 2 sides, and she'll explain why.
Yeah.
But again, this is large, but it's okay if it's large, right?
Yeah. That's small compared to some of the others I've made. But she didn't know who she was giving it to, so it just said made with love by, and it gives her name and the date, the year. And then it wasn't until probably 2 years ago. I'd always iron, and my binding just never worked until someone came to our Quilters Guild up here in Van Alstyne and said, this is your best friend. So once you sew it on and you're bringing it back around, you press it, and then you take a glue stick, because it's washable glue. It's going to wash out. It's never gummed up my machine or anyone else that I know of. You just run it along your binding, put it over, iron it. And then I use clips, not needles.
Right.
And then when I give this back to my client, I just tell her to and I send a glue stick home with her, because you can buy them by the bulk through Amazon. You just put it all over the back. It doesn't matter how much, because it's gonna go. It dries clear, and then just take your iron and it puts it there. And then some people will hand stitch it, but I just take the sewing machine and just run it along the edge, and I will run it along the edge out here as well. So when I do my binding, I know that it's going to stay in place and it doesn't curl up.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a real inexpensive. I think when I buy them in bulk, they're 20 some odd cents. So it's inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
But it's if they don't use glue, they will be doing for now on. But yeah, it was a game changer for me.
That was one of the very first tips I learned, and maybe it's because it was one of the very first tips classes I went to was with glue.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I just
think, how would that make you feel if you had brought something in a box, in a bag or whatever, and now you get to take it home in this cool little container? I just think that's really special that she does that for her clients. And I just love that idea. I really do. I think it's great. It hopefully makes the individual feel special.
I've always gotten good comments.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely, you would. Absolutely. So that leads me to, you had told me, so our last thing that we have here is talking about the wedding ring.
Yes. I've never made a double wedding ring quilt, and I love the pattern. I am notorious for finding them on Marketplace, garage sales. This one, I left the tag on, so she would see. I paid $10 for this, and it's all hand quilted. And there are some stains on it, but once I quilt it is when I will soak it to get the stains out.
Now, did it have a backing on it or not?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. So I'm gonna finish this.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
the next 2 I'll show is how this is how they came to me.
Mm-hmm.
This one, everybody sees the custom stuff and it's so pretty, but edge to edge is just as beautiful. But as you know, if you wash them, they crinkle. And this one I had done custom on because my family gets that because that's where I practice. But you'll admit it's not as crisp, the stitching, and you don't see it as much.
No, the fabric's going to change.
Yeah.
Anytime you wash anything, and maybe you can kind of see that in the light, but you can see it more in these corners. But to me, that means it's been loved.
Yes.
To me, that means it's been loved.
So this one was quilted exactly the same way as that one, and this is a double wedding ring that I had gotten off of at a garage sale. I think my cheapest one I paid $3 for.
Wow.
And I think, I can't believe the family gave it away. It's so cheap.
Because they don't know what to do with it. They don't know the value of it.
But if you can see, I did do the same on here, but I've not washed this quilt. And on the back, you'll also see I have blue fabric, but I have the white thread, and it just highlights the quilting. So it you don't feel like it's harsh. And I guess maybe that's a word I would say when you do
harsh is a good word.
The navy on white. So anyway, so that's.
And that's so pretty. It's so pretty. Let's see.
And I think and you had another person you had interviewed. My husband is my enabler.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I need to find a husband that's an enabler. Come on, man. Make me an enabler. I want an enabler too. But
and you all see this beautiful fabric behind me.
Mm-hmm.
I have another one on this wall in front of us. This is more fat quarter size, which means it's just a quarter of a yard.
Mm-hmm.
And then this wall, it's yardage that we've put on those
comic board
books.
I love this tip. I gave this tip a long time ago before I even started doing this.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the best tips I've ever seen or heard about.
But your room's not always going to look like this. Mine just started looking like this as of April of this year.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, I did it with a friend. We found a quilter who had passed away, and her husband was selling her stash. She had a Moda account, and so she had over 100 bolts of fabric. I have 108. Some people call it Y-back. Lots of flannel, and then this is what she had. So we divided it between my friend and I. And for my birthday, my husband built my bookshelves, and it just makes my space up here so much more fun to be in.
I love that. I just love how you did that because you coordinated. So here's an idea for you, my friends. Okay, you take your colors. You don't put them in the boxes because you can't see them, right?
Right.
And now you've got them all lined out. So if you want to do a quick project, right, you just go to your shelves, pick, and you're done.
Yeah.
Like 5 minutes.
Well, since I got so much, I did tell my girls and daughter-in-law. I told them, I said, bring me a pattern you want. Go shopping here. So, but it was through a sad situation. But I would like to think that she was happy that it went to another quilter who will use it and love it as much as she did.
Absolutely.
So,
well, I don't know if I told you this story. I have a friend. Well, the person I got my business from used to quilt and yada, yada, yada. And their neighbor behind them, the mom passed away, and apparently she was a doll maker, and she had tons of fabric. And they had already taken, this is going to kill you, it killed me, one load to the dumpster already.
Oh, cringe.
Yeah, I was cringing. And then she saw them loading the truck up and ran out there and said, hey, what are you doing with that? And they were saying, we're taking it to the dump. She calls me up right away, and I took it all. Now, am I using it all? No, but I gave it to people who would.
Yeah.
Because it's, it wasn't quilting fabric. It was more fabric which she was a doll maker.
Yeah.
So she had stuff you don't really use for quilting. But I didn't want it to go to the landfill.
No.
So
there's somebody. Yeah.
Absolutely, she knows that you've got it and shared it. And I just think that's a great thing to do. So for those of you out there are people like us that if you have a mother, grandmother, sister whoever that you have no desire and you want to get rid of it, don't throw it in the landfill. Give it to the guild. Give it to, there's so many places that you can give it to. Go to a quilt store and say, hey, is there somebody that would like to have this? I'm not saying the quilt store will, but somebody within.
There's Girl Scout troops that are always looking for it, or any kind of girls groups, girls clubs. I told you once when we moved to the neighborhood, since I really still had not gotten totally into quilting, and it was 9 years ago, there were girls in the neighborhood, same age as my daughter. And I said, I have all this fabric. And I had several machines. And I just said, every Tuesday, come from 1 to 4. The girls can sew for 2 hours and swim for 2 hours. Well, they ended up sewing 3 hours because they really loved it. And they swam for 1. So I was able to get rid of some of my fabric that way. But you're right. Give it to a guild. Because they pay their speakers that come and teach them new techniques, or
they have community service, and so that helps back a lot of those quilts that people make because a lot of people will just turn in the tops, right? And then somewhere you've got to have a back to it, right? And so that helps them put backs on the of the quilts to be able to donate to community service, to boys and girls clubs and schools, and all the different charities that
you've got hospice. You have the elderly homes that they need just someone says, oh, it's not very big, but they need something to cover their legs. Police officer and firemen, when they stop and help someone, they need something to wrap them up in.
So I want to step back a little bit. I want to make sure that you Shirley say when she moved into the neighborhood, her daughter didn't have that many friends. Well, I moved a lot when I was young, so I didn't have a whole lot of friends. So my mother used to involve me, not sewing, but involve me to get friends. Do you have a neighborhood that you just moved into and you like to sew and you want to get your daughter in it? Maybe invite her friends over. This is how we get the new generation excited about sewing. And maybe it's not quilting, but maybe it's just sewing. So I love that idea. So I hope that you share that, or maybe you put that into what you do, right, in your family, and get your daughter and her friends over. You have sleepovers, right? Why not quilt and teach them something new?
Or whatever craft you do.
Yeah.
Painting and crocheting and just any needlework or anything. Yeah. And Facebook is our friend, because our neighborhood had a Facebook page. So I just kind of put it out in the page, that my daughter's this age, we're new. If your daughter's, within 2 or 3 years, either direction, please come by. And I think we had 5 or 6 girls here every Tuesday.
Wow. See, I think we missed a lot of that. I don't know how many families do any of that anymore, but maybe they do more than I know.
Well, and I was a stay-at-home mom, so that I was able to do
that. Helps. That helps. But even if you work part-time.
Yeah, you can do Saturdays even.
Yeah. Or an evening, like 7 to 9 or something.
Right.
Doesn't have to be 4 hours. You just make it whatever you want to make it.
Yeah.
Really, honestly.
So
we have gone through so much, and we have talked about so many different things. With all that being said, what did we leave out? What popped in your head that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I made a list, and I think we've pretty much covered everything. Oh, I guess one thing that I've learned along the way, because we always think I need this color thread because I'm doing red, or I'm doing navy, or I'm doing black or tan or whatever. I learned this from Jenny from Missouri Star, because someone had asked on a podcast once and asked, what color threads do you buy? She said white, cream, and black. She may have said tan too, but she said, white, white or cream is going to cover most of your stuff. If you've got a dark piece, even reds, I'm going to sew with white. So you don't have to have a thread that matches. So you don't have to buy you don't have a large investment, because thread's not cheap. So, even if you just sew with white or an off-white or a gray, it's no one's going to see it but you.
Right.
So don't go overboard on your threads. Make a slight investment. Of course, we can't stress enough labels. Put on a label, because we think, oh, well, they're going to remember. But I'm a generation who received from 2 generations before me, and I don't know who made it. And I would have loved to have known.
Mhm.
So I will put labels on them, and I will just say, I will have to guess, but I'll give one credit for one, my paternal grandmother, and one for my maternal grandmother.
Right.
But this is where the history starts for the knowledge.
Mhm.
So,
And quilts last forever, and they get handed down and handed
Yeah.
down and handed down. As I was telling Shirley earlier, and you've heard me talk about this before, I think I have, but the quilt I have, it has P. Ramsey on it, which was an uncle, a great uncle. I think it's three greats. It's either 2 or 3, but I don't have a year on it. Would have been nice
yeah,
with a year too,
right,
but at least it had a label
right,
or his name.
right,
And this was for a man, not necessarily a woman.
right.
So for all you men out there, we are trying to make quilts for you too.
Well, and I mentioned Missouri Star several times, but there are so many other designers out there that have done great with YouTube videos. I never took a class. For me, because I homeschooled my kids, it meant time away from home. So, and I helped take care of my mother-in-law with Alzheimer's. So I used what tools were available to me. So you don't have to make a large investment, because a lot of times, I mean, Eleanor Burns makes one that's called Trip Around the World. And I never thought I could make that quilt. And that is one of the simplest ones you can ever make. But I learned from just watching her YouTube. You can learn so much just watching YouTubes.
And yes, I'm in the industry, but you don't have to buy quilting tools. I see so many videos for going to Harbor Freight.
Yeah.
And you can spend under $10 to get what you need to get,
Right,
to begin with. Now, are those other tools handy? No doubt about it. Absolutely. But you don't necessarily have to buy the name brand ones. You can go to Harbor Freight and get the cool rulers and the ones that are magnetic and, so on. So I've got a lot of Harbor Freight stuff in my room.
Yeah. Well, and it's just as sturdy, if not sturdier.
Could be, because it's made for, a different industry.
Right.
But think about outside the box for any of the tools and things that you have, because honestly, there's many things that I have another friend that has these little Tupperware bowls everywhere. So I'm bad. I used to throw my thread on the floor. It was a bad habit. Okay. Vacuum cleaners don't like thread, but the little tubs everywhere. Now I catch myself, I don't let go, and then I put it in. It makes my life a whole lot easier. And she has them all over the place.
When I usually do too, I took my garbage today, but there's a bag on the end of this, and there's a bag down here. Anytime I'm trimming, I trim as I go.
Mm-hmm.
I used to say I'll do it when I'm done. It's so much easier to keep up with it if you trim as you go. I've got 2 around my sewing machine, depends on which hands grab that, so I can make sure, and it does make it clean up. But one tip about your vacuum cleaner, if you get thread stuck up in it, when we use our rotary blades, sometimes there will be, you're cutting and it skips on a part, so you have to get a new blade. Don't throw those away. I put them back in the same container, but I put a Sharpie X on it so I know it's used. But I will use it on just a spare one that I have, and I'll take my deal off my sewing machine and I just run that blade across there, and those threads come right out.
Brilliant.
So
I just use the scissors, but that's a whole lot easier. Okay.
So you repurpose.
Save your blades. I love to repurpose things.
Oh, I do too.
You just have to be careful when you're running it across that rubber to not slice it in half.
Right.
But that's a great idea. Never even thought of that. So you've heard a lot of great tips here today, and I hope that you implement. I would like to know which was your favorite. So make sure you put it in the comments of which was your favorite tip. And always stay to the end, because those are when the best tips come out. Yeah. I can't thank you enough, Shirley.
Thank you
for being here, for being on here. How do people get in touch with you? Okay, we've already discussed this. She doesn't have a website yet. She doesn't have a Facebook page yet.
I just have a personal one, but I will soon have Grammy Quilts on Facebook. And then eventually I'll move into a web page. But I think a Facebook page can give you that, or an Instagram page, can give you
both.
What you need.
You can have both. So when she does get that, I will attach it to this podcast. So years down the road, if somebody's watching this, now they'll know how to reach out to you.
Thank you.
But I'm telling you, it's this has been really wonderful. I love her room. She's got a very large room, which you can't see, but you sort of can see how big this is. And what a playground to be in. This is such a fun playground. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
And we will see you next time. I don't know what city I'll be in next time. Maybe I'll be at home, but I'm looking forward to seeing you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a new podcast. There's always something new to learn. See you next time.